Last week on Don't Talk TV, when I was discussing why I use Signal, protonmail, and Cache, I suggested that there's one particular group of people in Canada that need to be especially careful about their privacy because they can be targeted just for happening to have some pride or some love for their own heritage. So I want to follow up on that in the next few episodes. In fact, it'll end up being a trilogy culminating in a live broadcast where I'll be talking with Maxime Bernier, the leader of the People's Party. I want to drill down on that a bit more and look at acts that are objectively clearly hateful, that are not prosecuted or not found to be hateful, and the sort of acts that are deemed to be hateful by our government. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, if we make it to 10,000 subscriptions on YouTube by the end of the year, I've promised to regrow my handlebar mustache. Hello, my name's Nicholas Wansbutter. I'm a lawyer in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, and welcome to Don't Talk TV. So I've suggested that there's one particular group in Canada that doesn't enjoy full protection of the law and is held to a higher standard, is more likely to be charged with hate crimes than anyone else. Let's just get out in the open and say it. It's white Canadians, especially those of a Christian background. In looking at that, on today's episode, we're going to firstly look at some incidents of things that I believe are clearly anti-white or anti-Christian hate crime. Then we will look at the state's response to that. And then thirdly, we'll look at a particular case where the state expended massive resources to hunt down someone who's essentially a meme maker and charge him with terrorism and hate crime offenses. Back in episode 46, I highlighted the ongoing crimes of the burning of Christian churches. At that time, it was only a dozen churches. Now we're up to 83. You may be shocked to hear that because that is nowhere to be seen or heard on legacy media. But if we look to alternate media, we can find this information. So this is an article from True North News. They have a map of the 83 churches that have been vandalized or burned since the residential schools announcement. So they say here that 83 Christian churches have been vandalized, burned down, or desecrated since the announcement of the apparent discovery of graves found near a residential school in Kamloops, BC. I pause to note that no bodies and no evidence of actual graves have been found at this point, a couple of years later. So here's a map showing all the churches across Canada that have been burned to the ground or desecrated. I'll put a link to this in the show description, but you can see for yourself the numerous churches that have been targeted. Churches aren't the only thing that are being targeted, though. Other aspects of Canadian heritage, especially if it has an association with the European heritage and background, have been the target of similar attacks. In that same episode that I've referenced, episode 46, I mention a large protest in Winnipeg, Manitoba that culminated in the tearing down of a statue of Queen Victoria at the legislature where one person was arrested, and the one person who was arrested was a counter-protester who was trying to stop them from tearing down the statue. Winnipeg and Manitoba are certainly not the only places where this sort of thing has happened. Have this CBC article titled Victoria Statue in Kitchener's Victoria Park vandalized for 6th time in 3 years. You can see what was done to the statue here. It says the Queen Victoria statue in Kitchener's Victoria Park has been vandalized once again. This marks the 6th time red paint was splattered on the statue in 3 years. It says it will cost the city of Kitchener $3,000 to clean it up, and the city has notified Waterloo Regional Police Service, but police have not yet confirmed whether they will be investigating the incident. The fact that Waterloo Regional Police may not even investigate this segues into the next part of this video where we look at what is the state's response to these sorts of incidents. Well, firstly, dealing with the church burnings, here is what Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had to say.
One of my reflections is I understand the anger that's out there against the federal government, against institutions like the Catholic Church. It is real and it is fully understandable given the shameful history that we're all becoming more and more aware of and engaging ourselves to do better as Canadians.
Now, he did say in that same interview that he did condemn the burning of churches, that he felt this was a bad thing, but then he went on to essentially justify it. Now, we can also look to the courts. How do the courts deal with cases when a white person is the victim of an apparent race-based attack? I have here a case from the Provincial Court of Alberta from 2016 on this topic, Her Majesty the Queen and Tamara Crowchief. And you can find the link for this in the show description as always. The facts are summarized in the introduction. The offender, Tamara Crowchief, pleaded guilty to assault causing bodily harm to Lydia White and 3 counts of breaching a recognizance. She admits that on November the 1st, 2015, while bound by recognizance, she was outside a Southwest Calgary pub with 2 friends. It was about 9 p.m., a time when the offender was to be in her residence. The victim, White, came out of the pub with a friend. One of the offender's friends approached White's friend and asked for a cigarette. White's friend obliged and began a conversation. Suddenly, the offender came up to White, yelled, quote, "I hate white people," unquote, and punched White in the mouth. The blow knocked out one of White's front teeth. And when Ms. Crowchief was booked, she told police that, quote, "the white man was out to get her," end quote. What did the judge have to say about this? He reviewed a number of cases where courts found that racial hatred was a motivation. So, for example, the Queen and Sims, the accused acted on his neo-Nazi philosophy and targeted the victim for his victim's supposedly pro-Semitic views. Another case here, Her Majesty the Queen and Van Brunt, the armed accused targeted a black person unknown to them. Both before and during the assault, they used a number of racial slurs. There was little else said in the course of the 1-minute-long assault. Her Majesty the Queen and Verdoliak, the accused and 2 others were verbally abusing an elderly woman on a Toronto transit bus. They were tattooed with neo-Nazi symbols. That was found to be hateful. Then the court says, these examples are readily distinguished from this case. The offender said, "I hate white people," and threw a punch. Her counsel argued the offender was complaining about her socioeconomic situation. The Crown Counsel called that mere speculation. I agree, but there is no evidence either way about what the offender meant, or whether, as in the cited cases, she holds or promotes an ideology which should explain why the assault was aimed at this victim. What is clear is that the offender was one of a group of 3 Indigenous persons, one of whom was apparently engaged in a friendly conversation with the victim's friend. This, again, is unlike the situations listed in the case referred by the Crown. It's not a hate crime when an Indigenous person yells, "I hate white people," and punches a white person out completely unprovoked, but it is hate crime when similar unprovoked attacks accompanied by expressions of hatred towards a racial group happen to a group other than white people. That's essentially what that case says. And that's really the distinction between those cases. We can also consider that the many protests, including the ones that I referenced in episode 46, that involved causes against colonialism or against residential schools, resulted in no charges in circumstances where people like Mr. Bernier were arrested and charged for trying to campaign during an election. So this finally brings me to the lengths that the state will go to get someone who is of the wrong political persuasion. And one case that caught my attention was the one of Patrick McDonald. And here's the RCMP announcement: individual associated with Atomwaffen Division charged with terrorism and hate propaganda. So this individual, Patrick Gordon McDonald, 26, from Ottawa, is facing 3 charges of participating in a terrorist group, facilitating terrorist activity, and commission of offense for a terrorist group. So what did he do to earn these charges? So it says, according to the investigation, Mr. McDonald allegedly helped produce propaganda material for the benefit of the terrorist entity Atomwaffen Division. He allegedly participated in and facilitated the creation, production, and distribution of 3 terrorist propaganda videos. This material was intended to promote the group and recruit members and encourage the commission of terrorist activities. Now, I haven't seen the videos that they're talking about. You can see some of Mr. McDonald's artwork just by a Google search. Allegedly, he went by the name Dark Foreigner. So I just searched on Google for images made by Dark Foreigner. I'm displaying a couple of them on the screen here. But essentially, what I take from this is that this man was arrested for being a meme maker. This is the next level of Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will always hurt me. Now, this video is not intended to be any sort of endorsement of Mr. McDonald's views or those of Adam Waffen, but the fact remains that the police went to incredible lengths to hunt down and find out who this meme maker was and charge him, whereas they can't solve even one of 83 churches that were burnt down, and they may not even investigate the vandalism of a statue of Queen Victoria in Victoria Park. We'll look at this in a bit more detail from a legal perspective in next week's episode, where I look at the Patron case, revisiting it. I talked about it when he was first charged. This video, of course, is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, call another lawyer or myself. My contact information is below. Always open to show suggestion ideas, so you can send an email to the email address listed below. And if you found this video at all interesting, helpful, or informative, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, and following us on social media. And again, don't forget, if we get to 10,000 subscriptions on YouTube by the end of the year, I will regrow my handlebar mustache.